Sure, because you know the current news, I mean, the media and things like that, you can get saturated and get into this the fear circuit. And what she talks about in this book again is the idea of overcoming the negativity. I mean, we sort of know that she deals with plasticity of the brain and how it can rewire itself fairly spontaneously depending on your ideas and what you want to reinforce in certain circuits. And of course, our proclivity as human beings is to somewhat look at the threat-based environment around us.
Yes.
And so we sometimes move automatically to negative thinking. What can happen to me? What out there that I'm not aware of or is not within my purview? And you start to realize the enormity of many things. Now we look around COVID and we see these little tiny things that you can't even see, I should say, that can affect us. And people get a little bit scared and a little bit frightened, and they start to pull a little bit within. And a book like this, like Success, can help you to sort of widen your aperture, widen your perspective, widen your lens, and start to see that, you know, it's really can be beautiful outside. Although here today in Chicago it's snowing a little bit, so.
Yeah, who knew that, you know, April in Chicago is going to snow? Just wait 15 minutes, right?
Right. Well, we're in that sort of, you know, transition zone between spring and winter, and hasn't quite left yet.
Yeah, late winter and medium winter and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have too much winter here in Chicago, but we didn't have a lot of snow this year. So,
just
side note.
Wait 15 minutes. When you mentioned that the source, even the title can sort of invoke this woo-woo kind of a feeling, like it could almost feel a little bit you know, new age or not grounded. I had a similar reaction to pulling out the success principles, but it was recommended by somebody else. And I thought, well, let me have a look at it. And sometimes the self-help books, particularly in the business world, can have almost a simplistic edge. Well, you know, right. Set your goal and work toward it. And I thought, well, this is probably what this book of 100 principles is going to be like. But I was really drawn to the ideas in his book. Jack Canfield is the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series.
Right, Chicken for the Soul, right.
And in that series, he makes his points by telling stories, and he does a similar thing in the Success Principles books. He illustrates all of his principles by telling a story. But what I found to be very, very powerful in the work that he had was similar to the source, where they were talking about the principles of attraction, but why do they work? And in a similar manner, a lot of the principles that Jack talks about include things like goal setting and affirmation writing and affirmation repetition, and almost to an obsession level. You know, writing it on cards and putting it on your mirror and putting it on your computer screen and repeating them daily and visualizing yourself and seeing yourself in, you know, having achieved those kinds of goals. And it's that, you know, that changing that mindset then, you know, opens up your field of view to see what's possible. And so in my reading, listening to both of the books that we're talking about today, I thought it was very interesting how they both had similar themes about, you know, what tactics you ought to take to be successful. Did you see, see the same thing?
Yes, yeah. And I think that what you see is, I mean, a lot of this isn't common sense, but what it is just making you aware that there are certain modalities, certain ways that you can operate that can sort of attune the brain to being open to larger things. Because again, depending on the environment you're in and the day-to-day thing, like I like to do with some of my current clients is, you know, tell them the first thing, because there's a little apprehension about their future. So I say the first thing is, you know, it's a very simple type of thing. It's called, you know, before you get down and touch your feet on the ground out of bed, you know, always say, today is going to be a great day. Absolutely. And if you do that on a continuous basis, instead of getting out and all of a sudden the brain floods with all the things that could go wrong or are going to happen, there's a very simple habit that starts to entrain the brain. So you start to anticipate wanting to explore the day as opposed to fearful of, oh, what's going to happen. Let me stay under these covers for a little bit more time. So, especially in a time where there's a lot of people are feeling a little bit claustrophobic and contained. It could really be important for people to think a little bit like that. But I agree with you, Deborah. It's the most important thing is being able to sort of see a larger picture so that you can be successful. And I know success can sound like, well, that's something like, the Success Magazine or Success Inc. or something like that.
Yeah.
No, but it's really more about, successful living and,
Right.
looking at something larger. So they do have a number of different techniques, and you can find a lot of these things. What they've done is, I think they take a synthesis of many things. Because you're right, you can have the business books, and let's organize the 100 principles for success in the company, and we can go from all the way from the strategic level all the way down to the factory floor, if you like, or just to the ordinary running of an office. And you can take all those things, and it can all be very logical and sensible. But what I think this book always reminds you is that we're also emotional beings, and you have to be comfortable allowing that to inform your logical thinking, because a lot of times there's people who tend towards liking, they were supported and encouraged when they were little. Oh, you're going to be the smart person and things like that, and so they take on that thing from their parents or grandparents, say he's so or she's so smart and things like that. And sometimes they become very good logically, but then you look at the rest of their lives and they're falling apart. But boy, they're whizzes, and you'll see people who have MBAs and they're sailing along, but in other ways, they're very unhappy and their lives aren't pulling together. So I think it's a sort of these books tend to pull you into a larger frame. So when you're coaching, you're not just coaching for a specific outcome, you're coaching for maybe a change of attitude about how you're seeing yourself and what you're going to reward yourself and what you're going to allow yourself to experience.